Hi everybody, welcome to another devlog for Astortion. Last week, which was a month ago, I told you that we are gonna start designing the game world. Apparently that was a lie, because as I started sketching the first drafts, I realized that I totally forgot to create the most important puzzle element, the jump pad. So I did that instead. This is how it looks like. If I step on it, it's gonna eat me somewhere. The same goes for other objects. The trajectory always stays the same, no matter from which side you enter the jump pad or with what velocity, you're always gonna land in the same place. And the whole thing can be, of course, disabled. But there's one problem. What if I wanna go to the other side of the jump pad without being launched? In 3D games, I could just go around, but there's no around in 2D. I also can't jump over it cause I actually don't know if I've ever explicitly stated that, but there's no jumping in Astortion. I could come up with some profound explanation as to why that is. Like, it's a conscious decision to force the player to think outside of the box. But the truth is, I simply ran out of controls. Like, if I were to add jumping, there would literally be too many buttons to comprehend. And also the spacebar is already taken. Anyway, the jump pad. I thought about making it wait for a few milliseconds before launching stuff. This way, the player would have enough time to go to the other side, if they wanted to, but this would make stuff like this impossible. And that's a no-no. So another idea was to use the lock ability. It even kinda makes sense. When we crouch, the lock ability is activated when crouching, we become static, so it's only logical that the jump pad wouldn't affect us as well. The thing is, the player up until now used to not be able to walk while crouching. So I had to fix this. And it may seem like a little feature that shouldn't take too long to implement, but I actually had to rewrite my entire animation component for that. If you remember, ages ago I was having some problems with the animator controller, but most importantly I had to deal with a very serious problem concerning Unity's animator component, which is that, as far as I know, you cannot synchronize transitions with the frame rate of your animation. And the way I fixed these problems is questionable, to say the least. It was the kind of thing that you write at 2 AM, half asleep but too excited to go to bed, and then the next day as you look at it, you begin to question your existence in general. So I knew that I'd need to rewrite this thing in the future. And guess what? The future is now. The previous design was terrible. I basically moved the logic that decides which animation should be played into a custom component, and I was using the animator's play method to manually play animations. The problem with this approach was that everything was hard-coded, and adding a new animation required me to change a lot of stuff. Usually, this decision-making logic would be contained within the animator controller, but the animator has two main issues that prevent me from doing that. First, there is the previously mentioned framerate synchronization. Take a look at this timeline. Currently, the walk animation is being played. Suddenly, the player starts running, and the animator immediately switches to a different animation clip. Now, depending on when this happens, the duration of a frame during which the transition occurs will vary. In this example, each frame takes 100 milliseconds, but the transition frame lasted for only 20, causing the character to stutter. Ideally, whenever a transition occurs, the animator should wait for the current frame to finish and then switch to a different animation. Technically, this can be achieved by using multiple transitions, one for every frame, each with an appropriate exit time. But we're talking about 8 to 24 additional transitions per state. Setting this up would be a nightmare. The second problem is the lack of nested state machines. Imagine that you have a character whose animations can be divided into two groups, one for being on the ground and one for being in the air. And you have a single property that decides which of the groups should be active. In this case, you need to add a transition from every single state in a group to the other group, which is extremely tedious. It would be great if you could have two nested state machines and define transitions only between them. And I know that there are substate machines in Unity. The thing is, they don't work this way. Even if I were to use them here, I'd still need to define an additional transition for every state within the substate machine to its root. Conceptually, these substate machines are more like a visual group than a standalone state machine. These two problems raise a serious question. Do I even need to use the animator controller? The answer is no. I ditched the entire thing and wrote my own animator. Instead of using a state machine, I'm using a simple tree-like graph. Each node is represented by a scriptable object. This way I don't need to edit the code whenever I change something. Also, in this system, keyframes can define custom sprites for when the character is facing left, and they can influence how the graph is resolved using this mappings property. For example, here, notice how when I stop moving with my left foot facing forward, the graph will resolve to an adequate crouching animation. Same for the right leg. And it propagates to other animations like idle. All in all, I'm really happy with how this turned out. This new animator is of course independent of Alice, so I can use it with other characters and stuff. Now, some of you may wonder why I waste my time on things that nobody's gonna even notice. And to that I say,